Hey man, when you stop fighting for her, something inside her shifts, and it's not what she expected. At first, she mistakes your silence for weakness. She believes you've given up because you've lost interest. She assumes she's won the game, that she finally has the emotional upper hand she's been craving. She tells herself that you've grown tired, that your love wasn't strong enough to last. But underneath all her rationalizations, a seed of confusion begins to grow. Because the man who used to care, the man who used to argue, the man who once refused to let her walk away, he's gone, and his absence doesn't feel like victory, it feels like emptiness. That's when it hits her. You weren't fighting because you were desperate. You were fighting because you cared. The irony is brutal. When you were arguing, explaining, or defending yourself, she felt safe. As twisted as it sounds, your effort reassured her. Every text, every call, every attempt to fix things confirmed her worth. But the moment you stopped, the ground beneath her started to crumble, because she never realized that your energy, your persistence, was the only thing holding the relationship together. And now that you've withdrawn it, she feels the void. Not the kind that can be filled with another man, or a distraction, or a night out, but the kind that lingers in silence. The kind that makes her question whether she misjudged everything. At first, she'll try to provoke you. Subtle comments, passive-aggressive texts, little jabs designed to make you react. She'll post things online meant to get your attention. She'll pretend to be unbothered, but her every move will scream, "Look at me." She needs to know you still care, even if it's through anger. Because anger, to her, still means connection. But you've outgrown that trap. You've realized that fighting for someone who isn't fighting for you isn't love. It's self-betrayal. So you stop responding. You stop explaining. You stop trying to prove your worth to someone too blind to see it. And that silence, it's not empty. It's powerful. It's the sound of you reclaiming your peace. At first, she'll tell herself she doesn't care. She'll say you're acting immature, that you're playing games, that you never really loved her. She'll repeat these things to her friends, not to convince them, but to convince herself. Because deep down, she knows your withdrawal isn't manipulation, it's evolution. It's the natural reaction of a man who's finally realized that love doesn't need to be begged for. You don't have to convince someone to stay. You don't have to argue for your place in their heart. And the moment you stop doing that, the moment you stop fighting, is the moment she starts losing her power. What she doesn't understand is that when a man truly stops fighting, it's not out of anger, it's out of acceptance. He's no longer trying to change her, or the situation, or himself to fit what she wants. He's accepted that the love he gave was enough, even if she couldn't see it. And that kind of peace is something women rarely encounter, because most men either explode or beg. But when you simply let go, calmly, quietly, completely, it shakes her. It forces her to confront something she's avoided her whole life: accountability. Because now she can't blame you. There's no drama, no argument, no closure, just silence. And that silence speaks louder than any fight ever could. She'll start replaying everything in her mind. The arguments, the messages, the times she pushed you away thinking you'd always return. Every time she told you do whatever you want, assuming you'd still choose her. And now, the irony cuts deep, because you finally did what you wanted. You walked away, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. And that's what makes it sting the most. It wasn't revenge, it was indifference. You didn't leave to prove a point. You left because you were done proving your love. That's the kind of maturity she can't process, because it means she didn't just lose your attention, she lost your effort. And for a woman, that's the death of everything. When a man stops fighting, the silence becomes her mirror. Every insecurity she projected onto you starts reflecting back at her. She'll wonder if she wasn't good enough. She'll question if you found someone else. She'll tell herself you've changed. But deep down, she knows. She's the one who pushed you there. Because she thought you'd never stop trying. She thought your loyalty was eternal. And now, that blind faith she once exploited is gone. In its place stands a version of you that's unrecognizable, calm, distant, focused. The kind of man who doesn't chase anymore. The kind of man women regret losing for the rest of their lives. The irony is, she'll finally start seeing your value when you no longer offer it to her. The patience she once called boring, the kindness she took for granted, the emotional effort she dismissed as weakness, now they all haunt her. because other men won't give her that. They'll give her excitement, validation, maybe attention, but not consistency, not peace, not the feeling of being truly understood. She'll start realizing that what she thought was control was actually comfort. You were her emotional safety net, and now that it's gone, every new connection feels fragile, because no one fights for her like you did, and no one ever will again. You see, when you stop fighting for her, she doesn't just lose your love, she loses her mirror. You were the reflection that made her feel significant. Your effort validated her worth. Your care softened her edges. Without you, she has to face the truth about herself, that her patterns push away good men and attract chaos, that her need for control comes from fear, not strength, that her pride cost her something real. And that's when the regret sets in, not because she misses the relationship, but because she finally understands the kind of man she lost. A man who loved her without conditions, a man who fought with her, not against her, a man who tried when everyone else gave up. But by the time she realizes it, it's too late. Because when a man truly stops fighting, he never comes back. He's not holding a grudge, he's moved on. His silence isn't punishment, it's peace. And that's the part that destroys her the most. The fact that you found peace without her. Because women can handle anger, they can handle rejection, but they can't handle indifference. Indifference means you've accepted life without them. It means you've healed. It means the war is over. And she lost not because you defeated her, but because you refused to keep fighting battles that had no meaning. As time passes, that silence becomes unbearable for her. It's not just that you've stopped calling, texting, or checking in, it's that you've stopped caring. And that absence of emotional energy, that void where your attention used to live, becomes the most haunting sound she's ever known. You were once her emotional constant, her predictable safety net, the man she could always push away, knowing you'd return. But now that certainty is gone, and with it, the illusion of control she built her self-worth upon. She tries to fill that space with distractions, new conversations, old friends, half-hearted flings, but nothing reaches her soul the way you did. Because what she misses isn't just you, it's the feeling of being fought for, that intoxicating validation that someone cared enough to argue, to stay, to explain, to try. And when you stop doing all that, she didn't just lose you, she lost a part of herself that only existed when she was loved by you. It starts to hit her at random moments when she sees something you both liked, when she hears your name in passing, when someone else laughs the way you used to. The world becomes one big reminder of your presence, precisely because you're no longer in it. That's how women realize the gravity of what they've lost. Not when you're begging, not when you're pleading, but when you're gone without noise. See, your absence speaks in ways your words never could. When you stop fighting for her, the silence itself becomes a sermon. It preaches patience, strength, and boundaries. It tells her you're no longer available to be drained, no longer willing to invest where your energy isn't reciprocated. And while she might smile in front of others, deep inside she feels something break, a subtle but irreversible understanding that you were not replaceable, that she mistook a genuine heart for a disposable one. Slowly, her defenses begin to crumble. The same ego that once made her feel powerful now traps her in quiet regret, because pride can only protect you until it starts hurting you. She'll scroll through your old messages, replay your voice notes, and reread the words you once wrote with sincerity. She'll notice the difference between how she felt then and how she feels now. Back then, she thought she had endless chances. Now she's realizing that love doesn't wait for clarity. It walks away when it's no longer respected. She'll start romanticizing even the arguments, the imperfections, the small moments she once took for granted. Every detail that once annoyed her now feels precious. She misses the way you said her name, the way you understood her moods, the way you saw beauty in her chaos. And for the first time, she'll wish she had chosen peace over pride. But here's the cruel truth. By the time a woman feels all this, the man has already changed. Your silence wasn't just about walking away, it was about transforming. The space she created with her indifference became the very ground where you rebuilt yourself. You learned to sit with the pain, to make peace with it, and to turn it into wisdom. You stopped seeking love externally and started cultivating it within. You began to understand that your strength doesn't come from being chosen, it comes from choosing yourself. That's what she never expected, because in her mind, You'd always be emotionally available, waiting on standby. But instead, you became untouchable, not because you hardened, but because you healed. That's what terrifies her most. Your silence is no longer a temporary reaction, it's a permanent state of peace. Now her world is out of balance. The very attention she once drowned in is now a drought. She can't manipulate your focus anymore. She can't rely on your reactions to validate her. And the longer your silence stretches, the more she begins to question herself. Was I too harsh? Did I push too hard? Did I take him for granted? These questions eat away at her pride. Because for the first time, she's being forced to confront her behavior without the emotional cushion of your reassurance. She's realizing that love isn't something you test, it's something you protect. And in trying to test you, she destroyed the one man who was willing to stay through the storms. That's when her ego and her emotions start to fight each other. One tells her to stay strong, to pretend she doesn't care. The other whispers the truth she doesn't want to hear. She lost something she'll never find again. Meanwhile, you've grown into a man she wouldn't even recognize. The chaos that once controlled you no longer affects you. The need to explain yourself, to justify your actions, to prove your loyalty, all of it has vanished. You've found peace in not needing closure, because you understand that real closure doesn't come from her, it comes from acceptance. You've stopped wondering what she's doing, stopped stalking her social media, stopped replaying the moments you could have done differently, because now you finally understand that what's meant for you doesn't require fighting, it reciprocates. You don't need to chase love when you are love. You don't need to argue to be heard when your silence already says everything. And that realization, that's what separates a man who's still healing from one who's fully evolved. And as that evolution becomes undeniable, she starts to see you everywhere, not physically, but energetically. Every man she dates after you gets compared to you subconsciously. The way they talk, the way they handle conflict, the way they show affection, it all falls short. Because while she was searching for excitement, you were offering emotional depth. While she wanted validation, you were offering stability. And now, in hindsight, that's what she craves the most. She'll look at the new men and feel that something is missing, not because they're bad, but because they lack the safety you provided. That's when she finally understands that love isn't supposed to feel chaotic. It's supposed to feel calm, and she destroyed that calm when she mistook your effort for weakness. By now, her confusion has turned into quiet panic. She'll start rationalizing, reaching out subtly, trying to gauge if you still care. Maybe she'll send a "Hey stranger" text. Maybe she'll like one of your posts. Maybe she'll bring up an inside joke to reopen the door. But deep down, she knows it's not the same anymore. You might respond politely, but the emotional warmth is gone. The dynamic has reversed completely. You're no longer the one chasing reassurance, she is. And the harder she tries to reconnect, the more she realizes how much she underestimated your strength. Because when a man learns to walk away from what doesn't serve his peace, no amount of nostalgia can lure him back. You've outgrown the version of yourself that once needed her validation. Now, you validate yourself by staying still. And here's where the lesson cuts deepest. She finally understands that the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. Hate still means there's emotion involved, but indifference, it's emptiness, it's acceptance. It's when you can look at someone who once meant everything and feel nothing. That's the stage you've reached now. You don't wish her harm, you don't wish her well, you simply wish her away. Not out of malice, but because peace has become your new priority. You've realized that you can love someone deeply and still let them go without resentment. You've discovered that not everyone deserves your energy, even if they once had your heart. And that kind of emotional discipline, that's what breaks her completely. Because women can manipulate emotions, but they can't manipulate silence rooted in self-respect. Eventually, she'll come to the realization that it was never about winning or losing, it was about growth. And she'll see that while she stayed stuck in cycles of pride, validation, and control, you kept evolving. Your silence wasn't punishment, it was transformation. And when she finally understands that you didn't stop fighting for her because you stopped loving her, but because you start loving yourself more, that truth will echo in her heart for years. Because in the end, that's the most painful lesson a woman can learn. The man she thought she could break became the man she could never replace. And as for you, you'll never need to prove your worth again. Because the moment you stopped fighting for her, you started fighting for your peace. And peace, once earned, is something no one, especially her, can ever take away again. With every passing week, the silence you've maintained begins to take on a life of its own in her mind. It's no longer just you not talking, it becomes an energy that follows her everywhere she goes. She checks her phone more often than she'd ever admit, scrolling through your old messages, reading your words like they're pieces of a story she never finished. She keeps wondering what you're doing, who you're with, whether you've forgotten her completely or whether you think of her the way she thinks of you now, in flashes, in guilt, in quiet moments she can't control. That silence is no longer peaceful for her, it's suffocating, because it reminds her that the emotional bridge she once stood on has burned completely. You were her anchor to emotional stability, the man who once fought for her no matter how difficult things got. And now, for the first time, she's standing alone in the chaos she created. That realization doesn't come with a dramatic moment. It creeps in slowly through everyday things, like when she laughs with someone new and feels how hollow it is, or when she posts something online hoping you'll notice, only to feel worse when you don't. It's when she lies in bed at night and realizes that the calm she once criticized you for is exactly what she misses now, because she's tired of chasing validation, tired of pretending she doesn't care, tired of holding on to pride that keeps her from peace. You've become a symbol in her mind, not of loss, but of clarity. You are proof that real love doesn't beg or threaten or explode. It remains steady until it's disrespected, and once it's disrespected, it walks away. That calm withdrawal you made, that silent exit, has done more damage to her ego than any fight ever could. You see, what she's feeling now is not heartbreak, it's reckoning. It's the moment her actions catch up to her emotions. The moment she realizes that the way she treated you wasn't strength, it was fear disguised as power. She'll think back to every time she tested your love, every time she ignored your efforts, every time she told herself that she could do better. And now, she'll realize she was never searching for someone better. She was running from someone real. Because the truth is, most people aren't ready for genuine love. Real love exposes your flaws, your insecurities, your wounds. You didn't make her feel safe in her fantasy. You made her confront her truth. And for a woman who wasn't ready for that, losing you was easier than growing with you. But as the noise fades, the regret begins to speak. That regret isn't loud. It's subtle, invasive, like a slow poison. It shows up in small ways, in the way she compares every man to you, in the way she feels uneasy when someone new gives her attention, in the way her heart still jumps when she sees a message notification that isn't from you. It's not about missing the relationship anymore. It's about missing the security your presence gave her. You were her emotional compass, the calm in her storm. She may have thought she wanted excitement, but what she truly craved was peace. And peace, she now realizes, was what you offered effortlessly. The irony is cruel. She's now addicted to the same silence she once complained about, but she can't get it from anyone else. Because true masculine calm isn't something you can mimic, it's something you become. While she's wrestling with her emotions, you're moving forward, not out of spite, not out of pride, but out of growth. You've learned that peace is not found in controlling outcomes, but in surrendering to them. You no longer seek closure because you understand that closure is a form of permission to let go, to evolve, to detach without bitterness. You've accepted that some people love you the way they know how, not the way you deserve. You've stopped personalizing her inability to love you deeply. You realize now that her pulling away wasn't rejection, it was reflection. She couldn't meet you where you stood, because standing still requires strength, and she was still chasing validation. That's why you walked away, not to hurt her, but to protect your energy. And as you walk deeper into your purpose, you start to see that her leaving wasn't the end of your story, it was the start of your becoming. But here's the twist, she never saw coming. Your indifference now hurts her more than your anger ever did, because anger still means you care. Indifference means you don't. She'll try to get your attention in ways she once avoided, subtle comments, mutual friends, emotional breadcrumbs, but nothing lands. Your energy is untouchable now, and that terrifies her, because she realizes she doesn't have access to your emotions anymore. You're not waiting for a text, you're not analyzing her actions, you're not living in the past. You've evolved into someone who's learned to sit in silence and be completely content. She wanted control. What she got instead was consequence. Because nothing scares a woman who thrives on validation more than a man who no longer needs her for any of it. And as she begins to feel the full impact of that loss, her mind starts replaying all the times you fought for her and what those moments really meant. Every argument you tried to resolve, every time you swallowed your pride to make peace, every effort you made that went unnoticed, they all start to replay in her head like a movie she can't turn off. And suddenly, she sees it. You weren't fighting because you were weak. You were fighting because you believed in the connection. You weren't emotional because you were needy. You were vulnerable because you were real. You didn't lose your dignity when you cared. She lost hers when she stopped appreciating it. And the cruelest part of it all? She'll realize this when it's far too late to fix it. Because you can forgive, but you can't unsee the truth once you've woken up to it. Now, she's left in a paradox of her own making, missing the same man she once said she didn't need. She'll remember your gentleness, your patience, your ability to handle her storms without trying to control them. And she'll wish she could go back. But you'll be long gone, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually. Because once a man tastes peace, chaos no longer excites him. You've moved into a chapter of your life where peace feels better than attention, solitude feels better than begging, and self-respect feels better than being loved conditionally. You're not angry, you're free, and freedom once found can't be traded back for familiarity. That's the difference between you and her. You outgrew the game she thought she was winning. Eventually, she'll try to rationalize your absence, tell herself you've changed, that you became cold, that you were never who she thought you were. But those lies won't soothe her anymore. Because deep down, she knows you didn't change. You evolved. You stopped loving from fear and started loving from power. You stopped reacting and started responding. You stopped chasing and started choosing. That distinction makes all the difference. Because she'll realize that the man she took for granted is now the man she can't reach. You've turned your pain into poise, your heartbreak into hunger, your silence into strength. And while she's still trying to make sense of your absence, you've already made peace with her irrelevance. And one day, when she finally sees you again, maybe in person, maybe online, she'll feel it. That undeniable energy of a man who's detached, healed, and elevated. You won't need to say a word. Your calm will say it all. Because real power doesn't announce itself, it's felt. She'll smile, maybe even try to start a conversation, but something inside her will ache. Because she'll see in your eyes that she no longer exists there. Not out of hate, not out of resentment, but out of liberation. You've reclaimed your energy, you've mastered your emotions, you've turned the war she created into wisdom you carry. And that, right there, is the ultimate irony. She thought you'd crumble when you stopped fighting, but instead, you became everything she was never ready for. As the months go by, she begins to live in quiet denial. She tells herself she's moved on, that she's happy, that losing you was meant to happen. She even convinces others of it, posting smiles that don't reach her eyes, dating men who can't hold her attention for more than a few weeks, laughing a little too loud in places she used to be silent. But every facade fades when she's alone. That's when the memories return. Not the big moments, but the small ones. The sound of your voice, the way you used to listen without interrupting, the subtle confidence in your silence when she tried to provoke you. Those fragments come back at night when she's trying to sleep, turning her peace into restlessness. That's when she realizes something profound. You weren't just another man, you were home. And she destroyed it, searching for excitement. Now, she lives in contradiction. Outwardly, she's free, but internally, she's haunted. Because once a woman experiences the energy of a grounded man, she can't unfeel it. Every time she meets someone new, her soul does a silent comparison. Does he make her feel safe like you did? Does he have that same steady gaze that saw through her games? Does he exude the same calm that your silence carried? And the answer is always no, because men like you don't come often. You didn't just occupy her time, you shifted her perception of what real presence feels like. And the tragedy is that she had to lose you to understand your value. Her pride cost her something her heart will never fully recover from. And while she tries to replace you, she keeps discovering that it's not you she's chasing, it's the feeling of being seen by you. There's something poetic about how the tables turn. Once upon a time, you were the one lying awake, overthinking, wondering what you did wrong. You replayed her words, her tone, her distance, trying to decode the reasons behind her indifference. But now, it's her turn to stay up wondering about you. Wondering how a man who once cared so deeply can be so unmoved now. She scrolls through your profile, looking for signs that you still care, but all she finds is peace, the kind of peace that can't be faked. You've become something she no longer recognizes, emotionally untouchable, spiritually centered, and focused on your own life. That's the part that devastates her most, because women are used to men breaking down, begging, trying to prove something. But you've proven something far greater, that a man's power doesn't come from his words. It comes from his ability to walk away and never look back. Her regret deepens when she starts realizing how rare it is to find what you gave so freely. Consistency. See, she thought love was about intensity. She thought passion was the goal. But now she knows it's the quiet consistency that matters. The way you checked on her without being asked. The way you stayed calm when she was emotional. The way you stood firm when she tried to push boundaries. She called it controlling. Now she calls it leadership. She used to think she wanted a man who matched her chaos. Now she sees that her chaos only made sense in your calm. And the more she reflects, the clearer it becomes. She didn't just lose you, she lost the version of herself that existed when she was with you. The woman who felt safe, admired, because no matter how much she pretends otherwise, she knows deep down she hasn't been that version of herself since you left. And now, her memories have become her punishment. Every song, every scent, every quiet morning reminds her of the simplicity she destroyed. You were never perfect, but you were present. You didn't promise her the world, you simply showed up in it. You didn't chase validation, you created stability. You didn't need to shout your worth, you lived it. But she couldn't see that then, because she was too addicted to the noise, the attention, the validation, the thrill of being desired by many. But here's the paradox, that same noise that once made her feel alive now drains her, because she's realizing that there's no peace in being desired, only in being valued. And the only man who ever truly valued her walked away in silence. Now, that silence echoes louder than her laughter, louder than her friends, louder than anything she tries to distract herself with. As she sits with that realization, a shift begins to happen, not towards you, but within her. She starts questioning everything, why she played those games, why she sabotaged something real, why she pushed away the one person who wanted her without needing to control her. And she'll hate the answers, because they all point back to one thing: immaturity. She wanted validation more than connection. She wanted to win more than she wanted love. She wanted power more than peace. But none of that lasts. The power fades, the validation dries up, and the people who fed her ego disappear when she's no longer entertaining. That's when she starts to crave the depth she once ran from. The kind of depth that made her uncomfortable because it demanded truth. And that's the tragedy of her lesson. She had to lose you to discover the kind of man she'll never find again. Meanwhile, you've built a life that doesn't revolve around her or anyone. You've learned the art of emotional detachment, not from bitterness, but from wisdom. You understand now that love isn't about proving yourself, it's about alignment. You've realized that chasing what isn't meant for you only delays what is. You've grown stronger, calmer, sharper. Your energy has shifted. You're no longer trying to be seen, you've become undeniable. That's why her thoughts still orbit around you. Because women can feel when a man has stepped fully into his power. It's not arrogance, it's presence. It's the quiet authority of a man who no longer needs validation to feel complete. You used to chase peace in other people, now peace chases you. And that's the irony. The woman who once had your attention now can't even earn your response. She might even try to return one day, not because she's changed, but because she misses the reflection of herself she saw in your eyes. She'll come with words like, "I've been thinking about you," or "I didn't realize what I had," but you'll sense the difference immediately. Her energy won't carry the same weight it once did. You'll listen, but you won't feel that pull anymore, because you've grown beyond emotional dependency. You now understand that peace feels better than closure, and distance feels safer than confusion. And as she looks into your eyes hoping to find the old you, all she'll see is someone she can't reach anymore. You're not cold, you're free. And freedom is something people only understand once they've lost everything that once controlled them. That's the day she'll finally break. Quietly, privately, away from everyone's eyes, because she'll realize that she can't undo what's been done. She'll understand that you didn't walk away because you stopped caring. You walked away because you finally did. You cared enough about yourself to stop begging for love. You cared enough to stop fighting battles that drained you. You cared enough to stop trying to fix someone who refused to meet you halfway. And that's the kind of care that terrifies her, the self-respect kind, because now she knows you're not coming back. Not because you hate her, but because you've accepted the truth she still runs from. You can't save someone who's addicted to breaking what's good for them. In the end, she'll live with that truth quietly, that she hurt a man who would have given her the world, only to end up in a world that feels empty without him. She'll replay your silence for years, trying to make sense of how she lost someone so solid, so grounded, so patient. But you won't be there to explain it to her. You'll be somewhere else, at peace, living a life built from the pain she caused, stronger than she ever imagined you could be. And that right there is the ultimate ending. Not revenge, not validation, just peace. Because that's the one thing she can't fake, can't control, and can't ever reclaim from you. She'll move on, but she'll never heal from you. Because while she taught you pain, you taught her permanence, the kind that never fades, even after the silence becomes eternal. By the time she finally accepts that you're gone, you've already entered an entirely different chapter of your life, one built on stillness, purpose, and control. You no longer crave validation from the outside world, because you've realized that validation built on emotional instability is a trap. What you crave now is alignment between your words and your actions, your mind and your soul. You wake up with clarity instead of confusion, focus instead of longing. You've stopped living reactively and started living intentionally. That's what makes you dangerous in the best way possible. Not because you're cold, but because you're centered. You've learned the art of not responding to chaos, of letting time reveal truth instead of your emotions. That's the man you were always meant to be, but pain was the teacher that made you ready for it. And ironically, she was the lesson. When you reach that level of inner stability, something powerful happens. Women start seeing you differently. You're no longer the man who gives energy freely. You've become selective, deliberate, patient. You don't rush to prove yourself. You don't seek connection out of loneliness, and you don't fear losing anyone, because now you understand that you are the value. You are the peace in the storm, the calm in the chaos, the structure in the uncertainty. And women can feel that. They can sense it before you even speak. It's in the way you move, the way you listen, the way you no longer flinch when someone tries to test your emotions. You've learned that silence is not weakness, it's strategy. You no longer chase, you attract. And what you attract now is peace, because that's the frequency you live on. She'll feel that energy too. Even if she never says it, she'll notice it. When she sees you again, her intuition will scream the truth. Her pride will never admit that you've become everything she hoped you wouldn't. Untouchable, balanced, whole. You no longer need her, and that realization will sting more than anything you could have ever said to her, because she'll see that your silence wasn't about punishment, it was about rebirth. You rebuilt yourself from the ground up. You went from explaining your worth to embodying it. And while she's still stuck searching for external validation, you've already found yours in discipline, in solitude, in mastery. You've learned that strength isn't about dominance, but about direction. You're not controlled by emotions anymore. You use them as fuel. The most liberating thing you'll ever feel is the absence of need. The moment you stop needing someone to love you, to understand you, or to see your worth, you become unstoppable. That's when everything begins to align. Your confidence, your purpose, your peace. You'll look back at the man you were, the one who fought for someone who didn't appreciate him, and you'll feel gratitude, not regret, because that version of you was necessary. He was the foundation of your evolution. Without that heartbreak, without that silence, without that loss, you would have never learned how to build alone. And that's the secret few men ever realize, that losing her wasn't a tragedy, it was the awakening. Because sometimes God breaks your heart to remind you where your strength was sleeping. Now, when women come into your life, they sense that difference immediately. You're not bitter, you're composed, you're not guarded, you're grounded. You no longer need to be validated by attention because you've learned how to validate yourself through discipline and peace. You don't fear losing anyone because you trust your ability to walk away. You don't argue to be understood because you know your silence already says enough. You've turned heartbreak into an armor of grace, and it radiates through everything you do. You've become a man who doesn't speak for approval, but for clarity. A man who doesn't react, he responds. And that subtle difference between reaction and response is what separates you from every man still living in emotional chaos. And when you start living at that frequency, something incredible happens. Peace becomes addictive. You no longer crave excitement, you crave equilibrium. You stop confusing emotional highs with love. You stop mistaking comfort for connection. You begin to realize that your greatest power isn't how much you care, but how calmly you can walk away from what disturbs your balance. That's when life begins to flow again. Work improves, focus sharpens, confidence grows quietly. You start attracting opportunities, people and situations that align with your new energy. You've stepped into the version of yourself that's rare, unshakable, and magnetic. The kind of man that doesn't chase validation, because validation now chases him. She, meanwhile, remains stuck in cycles of nostalgia. She'll have moments where she convinces herself she's fine, until something reminds her of you, and it always will. Because the kind of love you gave wasn't replaceable. You didn't just offer attention, you offered presence. You didn't just make her feel wanted, you made her feel understood. And the kind of understanding that comes from masculine composure can't be faked, it's felt. Every new man she meets will remind her of what he lacks. Every small red flag will make her miss the calmness you carried. And she'll realize too late that what she thought was boring was actually safe. That what she called predictable was actually consistent. That what she left behind in search of excitement was the only real thing she ever had. But you'll no longer hold resentment. Because true detachment isn't about pretending not to care, it's about caring without attachment. You'll look at her memory with compassion, not bitterness. You'll understand that she wasn't evil, she was just unhealed. You were ready for depth, and she was still addicted to surface-level attention. You wanted partnership, and she wanted validation. You were building a future, and she was living in the moment, and that's okay. Because every person you meet is either a blessing or a lesson. And she was both. The lesson that taught you your worth isn't negotiable, and the blessing that freed you from everything that wasn't meant for your peace. Now you move through the world differently. You're not looking for love out of loneliness, you're open to it from strength. You understand now that real love isn't something that demands your energy, it reciprocates it. It doesn't drain you, it grounds you. You no longer chase people who leave. You no longer fight to be chosen. You've become a man of value. A man of peace, a man of vision, the kind of man who doesn't need to announce his worth because his silence already says everything. You're not trying to prove her wrong anymore, you're too busy proving yourself right, and that quiet confidence, that unwavering composure is what makes you powerful beyond measure. And so the story ends, not with revenge, not with reconciliation, but with peace. You've learned the truth that most men never do. That walking away doesn't mean weakness, it means wisdom. You stopped fighting for her and started fighting for yourself. You stopped chasing love and started embodying it. You became the man she always wanted, but could never keep. Not because she wasn't enough, but because she wasn't ready. And now you carry that peace, like armor, calm, unshakable, untouchable. She'll think about you often, maybe even dream of what could have been. But you'll sleep peacefully knowing that you didn't lose her, she lost you. And that lost brother will echo in her heart far longer than your silence ever will.